buried her enemies alive, set fire to entire cities, and later was recognized by the church. This isn't some legend or some fairy tale. This is the true story of a Viking princess that turned vengeance into an art form, and then later on began her path to sainthood. Her enemies thought they could wrong her and get away with it, not knowing that she would destroy them in some of the most brutal acts of vengeance in history. Every move that she made was colder and more calculating than the next. Enemies no longer had cities to return to, nor did they have a future. Was she a hero, a villain? Maybe both. Let's unravel the legend of Saint Olga of Kyiv. To understand Olga's path to vengeance, we need to understand the world she came from. This is a very brutal, savage, and chaotic time. This is the period of Viking raids. She, in fact, was a Viking princess that was married off to Prince Igor the First of Kiev. So this is the beginning of the Kievan Rus Empire, which is much later down the line. At that time, Kiev was a major trade and military power within the region. It had very deeply rooted pagan traditions. Olga was a noble by birth, and when she was married off, she married another noble, thus making her the queen consort of Kiev. For a period of time, it was relatively peaceful for her, until her enemies decided to test her and see how far that they would push her. In 945 is when our tale truly begins. Her husband Igor goes out to collect tribute from the local tribes, one in particular in the east, the Drevlians. On his way to see them, they ambush him and capture Igor and his men, and they kill off his men and they decide to execute him in an incredibly brutal way. They bend down 2 birch trees and they attach his leg and arm on one side to one tree and his leg and arm on the other side to another tree, and they let him loose and it splits him in half. And at that point, they hatched a new plot. They decided, you know what, we're going to send ambassadors to Olga and try to solve this problem. So they send off a group of men to go see Olga. She brings them into the court, warmly greets them, and then they inform her, your husband is dead, and we want you to marry our Prince Maul. And she responded to them, hold on, let me get this right. Your proposal is pleasing to me indeed. My husband cannot rise again from the dead, but I desire to honor you tomorrow. In the presence of my people, return now to your boats and remain there with the aspect of arrogance. I shall send for you in the morrow, and you shall say, we will not ride on no horse, nor on foot. Carry us in our boat, and you shall be carried in your boat. The Drevlians return to the camp. All the signs are positive. The negotiations are going to be happening tomorrow, and there's a good chance that she'll be marrying their prince soon. So they wait until the morning, and when Olga's men arrive, they do exactly as she instructed. They say to them, hey, we're not going to go on horseback. We're not going to walk. You need to carry us in our boat. So Olga's men lift up the boat like a pelican and put it on their shoulder and start marching into the city. And at that point, the Drevlians see the surprise that she had her men prepare for them the night beforehand. The night beforehand, her men dug a trench wide enough, long enough, and deep enough for the boat and men and all to be thrown into. And so the men do. Her men throw the boat with the Drevlian ambassadors in there, and they're panicking. They're wondering what's happening. Why is this? What did we do wrong? Why is this happening? And as this is happening, right as they start to realize what's going on, dirt starts landing on top of them. And they realize they're being buried alive. And in the primary chronicles, it says that she leaned over the side of the trench and asked them, do you find these honors to your taste? And they bury them alive. So Olga at this point comes up with a plan. She decides, you know what, I'm going to send a message to the Drevlians. And she asks them, to send their distinguished men so that she may go to their prince with all due honors. So distinguished men would be the ruling class. So this would be the nobles and the landowners. These are the high class people. So the Drevlians they send all their distinguished men to go see Olga, and they arrive at Kiev, and she warmly welcomes them into the court, and they go in, and she goes, hey, you know what? I do not want to meet with you today. I will meet with you tomorrow. Tonight, wash off the wearies of the road. And she sends the men to go to the bathe, and her men escort them to the bath. They start preparing it for them, and all of a sudden the door slams shut, and the room starts getting hotter, and smoke starts rising in, and the men start to panic. So they start banging on the door, trying to open it. Come to find out that the door was sealed, and the entire building was lit on fire. There were no survivors, only ash. So now that this has happened, Olga has now killed off 2 separate groups of ambassadors. She comes up with another plan. She sends one more message to the Drevlians, and this message was, hey, please prepare for me a great amount of mead and a great feast, so that I may go to my husband's tomb, so that I may be able to mourn him. And they do. They prepare a great feast and copious amounts of mead. So when she arrives, the funeral feast begins, and she goes to her husband's tomb, and she starts to weep. And this is a normal aspect of this pagan ritual. So you would have to almost believe in, or think of it in a way of like a modern day wake. So the party of this party is going to last long into the night, and her men are drinking and eating, and she joins in, starts drinking and eating, and the Drevlians see this party that's happening almost outside, so they join in. They go out and they start drinking and eating, and the Drevlians start drinking a lot, to the point where some are passing out, some can't even, function at that point. They can't get up. They're just completely inebriated. And at that point, Olga leans over to one of her men, and all of a sudden her men stand up, draw their swords, and start slaughtering these Drevlians. And according to the primary chronicles, it's said that she had her men kill 5,000 Drevlians that night. 5,000 of them were slaughtered that night. Her and her men return back to Kiev, and they raise an army. And at this point, they set out, and they start conquering one by one by one. They start conquering towns and cities that the Drevlians control, and start taking them as their own, until they reach the capital. And at that point, they're sieging it, and this is the most well-defended area, so the siege is taking longer than normal, and it ended up taking about a year. And Olga sent another message. Again, this can't go wrong. Every time she sends a letter, it's always positive. She sends a letter into them. Why do you persist in holding out? All your cities have surrendered to me and submitted tribute, so that the inhabitants now cultivate their fields and their lands in peace, but you would rather die from hunger. And so the Drevlians, at this point, the siege has been lasting for such a long time. They're starving to death. And so they send out a message. What tribute would you like? What do you want? We have nothing. And she says, I want a simple tribute. Send me out 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from every house. And so all of a sudden, the entire city is excited. They're so happy that the siege is going to end. So they start running around, grabbing every bird that they can find, and they send them all out to Olga's men. Olga's men take them, and at this point, the sun's starting to set, and Olga orders every one of her men to attach a sulfur-soaked cloth to the leg of every bird and light it. And what do birds do when the sun sets? They go back to their nests and they rest. And what are nests made of? It's, little twigs and dry grass and stuff like that. It's kindling. And so all the birds flock back to their nests and they land, they roost, and these embers just light everything. And it is said in the primary chronicles that the entire city went ablaze all at once. And because this happened, there was no way for the Drevlians to be able to try to even put out the fire. So they start fleeing the city. And as they're fleeing the city, Olga orders her men to capture them. And they start capturing all of them. And she has them kill some of them. And then the rest she leaves to remain to pay tribute to her. And at this point, she returns home. And she has now avenged her husband. Later in her life, she converts to Catholicism. So she decides that she's going to take a pilgrimage and be baptized at the Holy Seat, which is, at this point, in Constantinople or Istanbul, this is the Holy Roman Empire. So she goes there, and when she arrives, she's greeted by a bunch of nobles and high-standing merchants and all kinds of people, including the Holy Roman Emperor. And it's said that the Holy Roman Emperor kind of had the hots for her. And so he starts pursuing her, and this brilliant woman comes up with another plan. She decides, hey, fine, let me be baptized first, and then we can start talking about this. But she decides she wants to be only baptized by the emperor himself. So the emperor does. He baptizes her. And here's the thing. She gets away with not having to marry him or anything like that. Because you have to remember, this is the Roman Empire. Like, they have the power to make anybody do anything. And she basically said, nah, I'm good. I'm not doing that. Because according to the law at that time, you could not marry the person that baptized you, because that would be considered spiritual incest, because they are your godfather. So she got out of this by tricking the most powerful man in the world at this point. This woman just cannot do anything wrong. This is kind of where her tale ends. There are other notable things that she did. She established trade. She stopped the persecution of Christians in the region. She did incredible things throughout her life. However, not anything as notable as her vengeance or tricking the Roman emperor. So in 969, she passed away. And later, she would become a saint. She was canonized and was the very first Slavic woman to ever be canonized. Saint Olga's path of vengeance is brutal and savage, but profound and transformative. From the depths of revenge to the heights of sainthood, this woman lived an incredible life. Olga's story challenges the very idea of redemption. Can you be a killer and be a saint? And in her case, yes. She became the patron saint of widows. If you'd like to dive into more stories and legends from history like this, from saints to sinners and everybody in between, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And who should I cover next? Leave a comment down below.